From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. We are talking history tonight, talking about some of the overshadowed stories in our civil rights history here in Tennessee. And a great panel, great couple of people up here to talk about it. There's been a new podcast that's been released. We can talk about some of these really important events in Tennessee history that are now hopefully getting the due that they certainly deserve. Happy to have with us Mark Ezell. He's the commissioner with the Tennessee Department of Tourism. Thank you for being with us.
It's good to be here.
And Elliott Robinson, program specialist with the Nashville Public Library. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
They have that great room there in the library that we'll talk all about. But I said at the top, there's a new podcast that's come out, and there's this trail, right? So tell me, as the commissioner of tourism, what is going on here? What are you all trying to do?
Well, let's talk about the trail first. Tennessee is part of the Tennessee Civil Rights Trail, is part of the U.S. Civil Rights Trail, which was launched in 2018 by, honestly, the state travel and tourism directors. Our jobs are to help inspire visitors to come to our communities and experience all the things that we have, and in Tennessee we have a lot. But specifically as it relates to the Tennessee Civil Rights Trail, what we have is places and events and people that literally during the civil rights movement showed such bravery and such courage, and it gives people the opportunity for them to come and to see what took place and why then it's so relevant still today.
So the trail's been here for a while. That's not new. But I'm going to ask one more question about it and then move to the podcast. So how many sites are there along this trail?
Well, we now have 14. 2 have been added this year, Stax Museum and the National Museum of African American Music here in Nashville. And those places have always been here. What the trail helps visitors connect and to move in Memphis and in Nashville to Clinton, Tennessee, and to experience those stories firsthand and to learn from those.
And, well, I mean, Elliott, let me ask you. So what is it, that room in the library is so remarkable. Tell us a little bit about that, and just for anybody who hadn't been in there, kind of give us a 101 on that room.
Well, the Civil Rights Room in the main downtown library here was dedicated in 2004. A gentleman named Bill King funded the room because he felt it was important to have some place to commemorate and to celebrate the stories of Nashville's involvement in the modern civil rights movement. A lot of people don't realize the influence and the impact that Nashville had on the movement as a whole. And my duty there is to craft programs for folks who come in. We get a lot of scheduled groups, whether they be students or companies or churches or families. And I'm kind of a curious and chatty staff member, and I run across a lot of visitors. We get a lot of tourists that come in, and it's amazing how many people I meet in the room that are making their way along the trail. And I've met people really from all over the globe in that room.
14 stops along the trail. How many are in Nashville? Do you know? Yes. How many are in Nashville?
Well, we have 7 in Nashville excuse me, we have 7 in Nashville, 6 in Memphis, and then the 1 in Clinton, Tennessee.
Wow, so Nashville's a big part of it.
Yeah, Nashville and Memphis both have such unique histories that, like Elliott said, and I would just tell you, our group recently went to the Civil Rights Room, and what we got to see and experience was great, but once we got to hear the stories and the impact that folks had, and I know he'll get to talk in a minute about Diane Nash and her latest award with the Medal of Freedom from the President, but to hear and understand what folks went through changes, at least I want it to change me. And I believe that it changes people when they come and they hear the stories and they are inspired by people's acts of bravery.
What stands out? What is a story that when people walk through that room, what's one that stands out to them, in your opinion, the most? What do you hear when you're walking around as a curious employee, them going, wow, I didn't know that, or wow, that blew my mind? What's one that stands out?
Something that they're drawn to is, in the center of the room is a circular replica of a lunch counter. And in the glass around the lunch counter is etched the 10 rules of engagement, if you might want to call it, the 10 rules that the nonviolent protesters had to follow in order to be able to participate. And this is something that a lot of people didn't realize. And these rules were created by the students themselves. Reverend James Lawson was their leader and trainer, so to speak, but he let them come up with the rules themselves in a very democratic way. And there are 5 do's and 5 don'ts around the counter. And things like don't block the entrances or the aisles in the stores, because that's obstructing the business, which is against the law, and they technically we're not breaking any laws. Things like don't strike back, no curse if abused. Remain seated until your leader has given you permission to get up. And follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr., just to name a few.
That's very powerful, and we had a picture of that. That is very powerful. And so that is kind of the big picture. Now we've launched in Tennessee, I guess, a new podcast, right?
3 episodes.
What's the situation with that?
Well, again, the storytelling is when people can really experience the emotion and to hear from historians, from experts. A few of them have literally the people who were involved in that. And I think of the Clinton, Tennessee, with the Clinton 12, and you hear from 2 members of the Clinton 12. And so these 3 series take place for Memphis, primarily around Dr. King and his work and his assassination, and Nashville centers in on the role of students, Fisk students. So you just think about these young people and what they went through and how they literally changed the world. And so what an inspiring group of stories come from that. And then Clinton, Tennessee is about the Clinton 12 and the desegregation of the high school there was the first one that became desegregated in the South. And so again, these stories really come alive. For someone who didn't know the story of Clinton, Tennessee, first you're shocked, and then you're saddened, and then honestly outraged, and inspired by, again, these 12 students who persevered, and the communities and the way that different people came and stepped up for them and fought for equal rights. So that's what the podcast is about, these 3 episodes that cover the communities and some of the stories that need to be shared, and some of which we know a little, and then some we might not know a lot about.
Is this a new thing for a tourism department, the Department of Tourism, to have a podcast? I mean, is that kind of a new thing?
Well, and yes, we've done those a little bit, but we were part of a group of the southeastern states of Travel South who created the U.S. Civil Rights Trail. And it was created by a guy named Lee Centel and with Alabama. And it was really his vision to create an ability for visitors to travel around. But when the podcast came, we partnered with Tanner Latham, an ingredient. He had done Finding Harriet and some other podcasts that are recognized nationally. And we have started these podcast series. So we're excited. The last 3 weeks now, we have released the 3 episodes about the places in Tennessee, and they are powerful.
And I love what you were saying about the display there in the library, about the counter and the words that are on the counter, the 10 words. And the commissioner was saying Nashville, he kind of highlighted Nashville and Students. And is that kind of the theme there in the library? Was that a big part of the civil rights movement here in Nashville? Was it the work of students, or what about that?
Most definitely. The students primarily from the 4 historically black colleges that we have here in town: Fisk University, Tennessee State, which was Tennessee A&I then, agricultural and industrial, Meharry Medical College, and American Baptist College Seminary, and also some white allies from places like Vanderbilt, Lipscomb Scarrett College, which was in existence then. And it was very young people. I can't imagine being 19 and 20 years old and being that focused on making such significant change in the country. And they didn't do this for themselves. They did it for my generation and for our children and our grandchildren in order to make America live up to her own stated ideals.
Do you think enough people know? Do you think word is getting out? I mean, it's great to have a podcast in the Department of Tourism and a trail and all that, but do you think people really know this story well enough?
I don't think so. We even get students here, people who live here and have been here all their lives. Some of them don't realize the room is there, and some of them don't realize the impact that Nashville had on the movement. And what we hope to get out of this with the podcast and being a part of the trail is to get more visitors to come in. Not only just random visitors to come through and take a look around, but also to contact us and schedule a group. Because what I do is we schedule groups and we create programs for groups to focus on what they want to know about more. If they want to know more about what the women did, or what was the role of the church, or even the role of music in the movement. And our programming team, we get to craft these engagements fresh, from the ground up for each one, and it makes it a lot more fun than just having a canned spiel to deliver every time.
That's great. I may ask each one of those tonight. I love that. That's really great. And so you feel the same way? People don't know this story like they should, or what about that?
Well, I mean, Winston Churchill said those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I think I know how much I am learning, and how much the time with Elliott. I know what that meant when I got home. And I talked to my wife, and then met with our children, and they, I believe, will talk to our grandchildren, and we have 5 granddaughters, because we need to know more about what people endured, and honestly, how wrong many of those situations were, and how human beings were treating human beings. It's honestly why I think our department and our team, Jill, I know, is in the audience tonight, but while we're really honored to get to be a part, to bring and drive folks to places to hear Elliott and others tell stories that we need to hear, and that we will benefit. I have been blessed by several of the places that I've been.
You're a pretty educated guy. You've been in the city a long time, and yet a lot of this.
Yeah, I'm a 7th generation Tennessean,
and yet a lot of this is kind of
too much to learn. And I'm glad that there are teachers, and there are people. Would you say you're a guardian of the stories?
I'm a steward of the stories.
Steward of the stories, which and I'm a recipient of now some of that.
You're now the commissioner for the Department of Tourism, but you, Purity Dairies?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so you've been here forever.
Yes, my grandfather started Purity in 1926, wow. And then my father and uncle came along with another family, and I was blessed to work with my grandfather, and then father and uncle, brothers, cousins, a lot of us. We sold the business, and I continued to run that business for another company, along with some other dairies across the southeast. And so Nashville is home to me. Tennessee is a place I care about, but I am learning how much history I did not know, and how it's better for me to know and to learn better empathy, but also better actions.
Absolutely. All right, that's great. So we're going to take a break. That kind of sets the table for our discussion. So I encourage people to call in, but we're going to take a break and then come back, and I want to hear some of these stories. So I'll ask each of our guests to kind of pinpoint some stories that mean the most to them, and we'll talk about that. But certainly, you call in as well if you want to. There's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.